about cartilage. Oh, I love cartilage. There's a shark, right? Chondroblasts and chondrocytes. We talked about like a blastic and a cyte, right? So blastic is mitotic, cyte is stable. These are tough, but they have some flexibility. There's 3 types, right? And so they all have different types of flexibility, right? Like the one in your nose is going to have different flexibility than the one in your ear. They don't have nerves for the most part. Up to 80% water, depending on them. And it allows them to be able to be good at compression, which is very good for all the spaces between your vertebrae, right? We need that. So also drink your water so they stay hydrated. So what it does is it actually has a coat. Like remember we talked about like the pericardium and right, the pleural cavities. So also it has a perichondrium. And that basically secretes in extracellular matrix like plasma essentially from the blood, and that's what keeps it hydrated or takes away waste and all that. There are 3 types of the cartilage that you need to know about: hyaline, elastic, and fibrocartilage, and we'll look at like where you find those. Okay. All right, so like going back to cartilage. So now we're going to look at those 3 types of cartilage: the hyaline, the elastic, and the fibrocartilage. Hyaline cartilage I love because I think it looks like really cute googly eyes. Just looking back at you, like don't you kind of want to just put a smiley face under? Like so many of these. I do. So hyaline cartilage is like saying hi, right? So this one way to remember it, little googly eyes. So the googly eyes are actually what we call the lacunae, which is kind of like the cave where the cells live, and like here's their nuclei, and then all this is the cell matrix. It's just all of what they've secreted to create that rigidity and sort of flexibility of the cartilage around it, right? So that's all this is. You're going to find this in your rib cage, right? Especially right here, like what we call the costal meaning ribs, cartilages, for example. So there's this. This is the most flexible. I remember we looked at the types of connective tissue that has the whirly swirls, and that circular kind of arrangement allows for all that. That's why you can bend your ear in 6 different ways, but you all don't bend your costa cartilages. That's going to be bad. It allows for flexibility. So I feel like, I don't know, these look like tree trunks to me. But they also, like, one of my other students pointed out, they kind of look like little ears. So it's easy to remember it's from your ear, okay? And since it's so bendy, it's very elastic, right? It is an elastic cartilage, right? So that's one way to remember that one. Okay. And the last one is like it's very tough cartilage, and we need it. We really need it because we're humans. So we went from like walking around on all 4s, now we're upright, right? And our body hasn't maybe quite caught up entirely. And so we have these compression points that are vertical now, like upright postures is constantly like cramming all of our vertebrae down on each other. So eventually at some point, your lumbars are gonna feel it, right? So that's the thing. So these still have the kind of googly eyes in a way. It's not as adorable, but they still have these little pairs of lacuna, you know, that have their little nuclei and the cells inside, and they've secreted a bunch of matrix, but the matrix in here is like, you can see the thickness of the collagen. That's a big one. The more shock you have, the more this compresses. It's hard to replace. And some people, it's actually irreplaceable because the cells that support it get damaged so, like, by different types of motions or just simply age, okay? So this is one of the ones that's coming for us. The fibrous fibrocartilage. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about bone. Okay. So bone is higher complexity. It's also really strong. So let's talk about osseous tissue. So like bone is what happens when we have cartilage. And then we start doing this thing where we started secreting ions into the matrix. So instead of it being like flexible, we really were able to make that rigidity rigid. And then we needed to mine it back out. So our cartilage, the whole vasculature and all the blood's like, you're fine. Just use your perichondrium to feed you or take away waste, right? The blood's all of a sudden needing direct lines to all of these minerals, right? Essentially. And calciums, and hydroxyapatites, whatever. And so what ended up happening is we get these shapes called osteons. Now these really look like a tree with a tree ring. They don't always look like this. Sometimes they're like, shaped a little bit. This is like a picture perfect one. So basically what you see is you see the rings and then you see this core. So this is not the nucleus. No. Actually, all of these little black kind of like dashes are where the houses of the cells are. They make a real cave, okay? What's in here is a vein, a little artery, and a nerve. A nerve, right? So now we're getting some support. So bones definitely like a lot more support. And what happens is we radiate out in these osteons all of the little cells, and they kind of butt up against each other, okay? Anytime you have a layer of something, it's known as a lamella or a lamellae, right? So like here's layers upon layers of rows of cells. And I know you can't see it in this picture, but like they actually have like, you can almost see these little black like kind of scratch marks. Those are like little caves, which we'll talk about later on, where they reach out and they touch each other. And they can also reach out and get direct line from the blood. So it's kind of interesting. You have bones and bone tissue in your bones. So that's easy to remember. Where do you find it? You should find it in your bones. Yeah. Okay, blood. It's an atypical connective tissue relative to everything else. Because as we just saw, we went from like getting supportive, like squishy supportive reticular to like fibrocartilage to like, bones. And then like blood went the total opposite way, but it connects because it reaches out to all these tissues. And so that's like why it gets classified in there. It has fibers, they're just not always active. We still will use fibers to do things like, prevent, or to form clots, like blood clots, and to stabilize structures like in not only the cells, but the vessels and all of that. But it's a different animal. So there's different parts of blood. There's the red blood cells, oxygen, carbon dioxide, some other stuff. And then there's the white blood cells. Now the white blood cells are really diverse, okay? So there's only like one species of red blood cell. There's like one, and that's it, okay? And then we've got like all of these different species, sort of, to think about. If you look at it as an ecology like analogy of white blood cells, and they all do different things to protect you from invaders, from your old parts, and then even from, like we're learning, like cancer in your own body. It's able to recognize some of your own cancers and clear them.